Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's special How Tuesday webinar dedicated to the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal's new Coast Guard data. I'm Carl Villacova, the Communications Director for the Monmouth University Urban Coast Institute, which is located on the Jersey Shore in West Long Branch, and I'm a member of the Portal Development Team, or the Portal Team for short. We and our friends from the Coast Guard's 5th District, which covers the coast from New Jersey down to North Carolina, recently partnered to create 3 maps showing proposed anchorage grounds in the Chesapeake and Delaware Bay areas, and a port access route study, or PARS, area extending from Cape Hatteras to Ocean City, Maryland. As you'll hear this morning, these proposed anchorage grounds were designed to ensure that vessel traffic can continue to be accommodated effectively and safely in the future, given changes brought about by offshore wind construction, increasing traffic volumes and vessel sizes, port infrastructure changes, and several other factors. The Coast Guard is also looking to the future with its Chesapeake Bay PARS, which will study whether a shipping safety fairway or any other new routing measures should be established in the Chesapeake's approaches. Our presenters this morning, Jerry Barnes and Matt Creelman of the Coast Guard's 5th District, will tell us more about the PARS and anchorage areas, demonstrate how the portal can be used to analyze the sites and inform public feedback on them, and finally tell us how to submit those public comments. After Jerry and Matt are finished, we'll open it up to a Q&A. You can ask anything you like about the presentation or the portal in general at that time. But if you do have an immediate question about something you see or hear, feel free to type it into the chat window, and we'll try to get to it at that time without interrupting the flow of the webinar too much. One other quick note, this webinar is being recorded for the benefit of those who couldn't make it today, and will be posted on the portal's blog and webinar pages sometime later this week, or possibly even by the end of the day. So thanks again to all of you for coming, and now I'll turn it over to Jerry and Matt.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for that great introduction, and good morning, everyone. The Coast Guard, we're very pleased to have this opportunity to team up with the Marco Data Portal team and to share with you some of the tools that can help inform the public when responding to Coast Guard proposed studies or rulemakings. So with me today, I have myself, and I've got Matt Creelman. We are located in the 5th Coast Guard District headquarters in Portsmouth, Virginia. We are both marine planners, and we work for the office that manages the ACE navigation program for the Mid-Atlantic region. Some of the things we're going to go over today is, as Carl said, the Chesapeake Bay Port Access Route Study, our proposed Delaware Bay anchorages, Chesapeake Bay lower anchorages, rulemaking that's in progress, and a review of coming attractions. So, in the Mid-Atlantic, these are really exciting times. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is the lead federal agency to permit renewable energy projects off our coast. In the Mid-Atlantic region, you'll see, if I can expand this out, there are proposed wind projects offshore every Mid-Atlantic state. For New Jersey, we have EDF Renewables, Ocean Wind. Delaware, we have Garden State, Skipjack. Offshore Maryland, U.S. Wind. Offshore Virginia, we have Dominion and the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Demonstration Project. And then in North Carolina, we have Avangrid Renewables. In addition, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has identified additional areas that they may lease in the future. Those include the New York Bight area offshore New York, and they include several areas down offshore Wilmington, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is responsible for permitting renewable energy projects on the outer continental shelf. And in the Mid-Atlantic, we have projects in various stages permitting. Back in 2011, recognizing that these projects may have impacts to navigational safety and the marine transportation system, the Coast Guard kicked off Atlantic Coast Port Access Route Study. This multi-year study received public input, reviewed AIS data, and kind of looked at some marine planning guidelines that were in use in Europe and identified routes customarily used by maritime traffic along the eastern seaboard. And if you can see on my screen, you can see those routes that the Coast Guard team identified. There's a deep draft route, Gulfstream route, towing vessel navigation route, and you'll see that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management leased areas and wind planning areas were there at that time. The purpose of a port access route study is really to determine if any type of routing measures are necessary in order to preserve navigation. Now, if you're interested in the Atlantic Coast Port Access Route Study, they are available online. And they're posted on the Coast Guard's Navigation Center's website. Hopefully you're seeing what I have here. We have Port Access Route Studies, PARS Final Reports. You can click on that, and you'll see the Atlantic Coast Port Access Route Study. And if you're interested, you can read in detail what is entailed, what the Coast Guard did, and what the recommendations were. So that study primarily focused on routes going up and down the eastern seaboard. In March of 2019, the Coast Guard came out and published that we're going to do a variety of supplemental studies on the eastern seaboard to look at the routes ships take to enter our ports. In the Mid-Atlantic region, the first port access route study that we are going to do is the Chesapeake Bay. The purpose of the route study is to determine whether existing routing measures are necessary, and the study area includes really from the port of Norfolk, Port of Virginia, out 200 nautical miles. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Creelman so he can kind of walk you through how we use the data portal and how you can use the data portal to participate in our study.
Where to go? And Matt, just be sure to speak up real well. Some people are saying that sound is cutting in and out. I'm hearing it okay, but just do the best you can.
Sure, Carl. How's this?
Loud and clear.
All right, good. I've never, ever been accused of being too quiet. So if I get too loud, please rein me back in. Good morning, and thanks for joining us today. I'm hoping that you can see this is our the portal up on the screen now. Hopefully we've gone past the title slide, but gone on there. So we're going to talk real quick about the Chesapeake Bay Port Access Route Study. All right, so when you go onto the portal, we've got all the wind energy areas up. Also, Carl, if I start talking too fast, slow me down. I'm from Chicago, so I talk a little fast. Not quite as fast as New York, but I'm getting there. All right, so what we can see on here, we'll go ahead and open up the Chesapeake Bay Port Access Route Study. And it's not up on here, so we're going to jump into data. And I'm just going to go real quickly walk through, and working on Jerry's computer is kind of fun. And we'll find the proposed, Coast Guard proposed areas and studies. And in here we'll open up, turn on the Chesapeake Bay PARS. So we'll go over here and look at that. And that is the extent of the PARS area, All right. Now, why would we look at something so large? Well, Jerry just talked about the port access route study going, the Atlantic coast going north and south. But now we're looking at wind energy areas and other things going on off the eastern seaboard. We want to make sure that we have the open transit lanes for commerce to get in. Norfolk being a pretty big port. Also the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay will go into that. So what we're going to do is we'll go in and look at this and kind of go through and find out where ships are going and at what time. So one thing we found on here is using the data sliders. We'll use the 2017 data sliders if I can get it to turn on. There it is. All right. And we'll kind of look at, let's start with cargo vessels and find out how they go and how they go through the areas. As you can see, we start off in January of 2017. Everybody kind of went through this wind energy area, right? Oop, what happened? Zoom in? That's all right. We'll go with that. So we can kind of see a natural east-west route that the cargo ships are using, at least in January. And if we follow along through that, we can kind of see that, yeah, this area looks pretty good, right? So I'm going to animate this and see if it'll go through, and this might be too fast for what's going on, but we'll see this general east-west route extending well offshore is one area to look at, all right? That's for cargo vessels. Tanker vessels are another one that's come in here on a routine basis. So we'll kind of look at that, and they don't have as much data, but that's okay. But you can see that they have a general route in and out from that east-west to the southeast as they go around the wind energy areas. And this is just some of the things that we look at as we're going through these things, right? So one of the objectives of the port access route study is to look at present traffic densities, figure out the potential densities as they're coming in as things change. So if we have this wind energy area sitting off the coast of Virginia right here, and it's forecasted right now to be a fairly substantial wind energy area, that's going to change, that's going to cause some routing to change, as we saw with the cargo vessels. I'll go back and turn that back on. So the cargo vessels not being able to come up through here are going to be forced to go out and around, which is something to look at. But that's how we start looking, using the portal here to kind of determine our potential traffic densities, right? We need to look at whether our existing routing measures are adequate. And right now we have a TSS, or a traffic separation scheme, that you can see that runs, the deep draft ones, runs to the southeast, northwest in this area, coming out and around it, and there's another one to the north of that that isn't used quite as frequently. But we need to determine if those are going to be adequate for what we anticipate to happen, right? And if they're not adequate, then what do we need to do to make them adequate? And before we do anything else, we get our public comments to make sure that what we're thinking is in line with the maritime community and the folks using the waterway. So that's just a real quick way of looking at this study. And I'm going to zoom back out just to show that, yeah, we're reaching way out here, and this kind of lets you see how the north-south, yeah, it's loading. This will let you see how the north-south routes came about through our area here, and how we're going to work in to our east-west. And I think it's trying to catch up.
Yeah, that one sometimes takes a few seconds to load versus other.
Yeah, it does, and that's fine. It's all good through there. So that's real quick the Chesapeake Bay port access route study and how we're looking and how we're going to be using and are using the data portal to help us out.
So I want to highlight that there's an open comment period for the Chesapeake Bay Port Access Route Study. That comment period closes January 27th, so 6 days from today, and we welcome your participation. So next up is our Delaware Bay potential anchorages. Matt's going to go over in detail using the portal. He's going to show the current anchoring practices and that they include leased wind energy areas adjacent to and within. Based on that, the Coast Guard is considering amending our regulations to establish 3 new anchorage grounds. Anchorage B, Breakwater, which is up at the top of your screen. Anchorage C, Cape Henlopen, and Anchorage D, Indian River. We seek your feedback on whether these anchorages would accommodate current and future traffic, improve navigation safety, and facilitate continued growth of maritime commerce. Comments can be posted on regulations.gov. There's the docket number on your screen, and this comment period closes January 28th, 2020. And with that, Matt?
All right, this is another fun one. I'm going to turn off Chesapeake Bay, I think. Yeah, turn that one off. And we'll jump out of that. And we're going to come in, since we're going to talk about the anchorages, I'm going to come in pretty close to these because using the portal, we got a real good idea of where these vessels are anchoring now. And
Let's turn on the anchorages.
yeah, that's the one. Did I not toggle it right? There we go. All right, there on your screen, you should be able to see 2 of the 3, and I'll scroll up, and the third one will show up right in here. All right. This other area up in here that's I'm highlighted here is one of the existing anchorage areas. It's the only existing anchorage area officially in the Delaware Bay area. But I want to focus in down in this area, and again, I'm going to use our portal to kind of highlight some things as we go. And we'll use the 2017 data. If I can toggle it right. Let me come out and jump back in. Yeah. Well, I want to get out of this one. All right, so we'll go back in. Look at our slider and see if we can get this to turn on this time. Honest, I'm pressing the button.
What's that, the 2017?
Yeah, I just, I don't know if it's mad at me or what.
I maybe just X out of it and reload it
Yeah, we'll try it.
out of the maritime section. Or even just reload the page. Are you on Wi-Fi?
Oh, we on Wi-Fi, Jerry?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, so maybe just try reloading the page and in case you got cut off at one point.
All right, let's see how this works. See if we can. That's not on. All right, let's look at tanker vessels. There we go. All right, I'm going to use tank vessels on this for this quick look because you can see there's a lot more of them that come into here. But you can see right now they're using this as a traffic separation scheme to the entrance of the Delaware Bay. This is what the skipjack area, wind energy area is. Skipjack, that project is in green. The orange color is the Garden State offshore energy area. And to our south is the Maryland U.S. wind energy area. As you can see, There's like this spot right in here. These are little where folks are anchoring now. And again, this is 2017 data. So as we go through each month, you can see that they're anchoring over in the wind energy area, or what will be the wind energy area. The actual project will be built out up in this area initially, with expansion potentially into the rest of it. But you can see these little swirls in these areas showing where the vessels are actually anchoring now. Occasionally they'll come over and anchor in this area. And as you see these, some running back and forth, there's some lightering going on as well. But the basics of this, and I'll go ahead and animate it, as you can see that most of the anchoring for the tank vessels is in an area that pretty soon they won't be able to, because there's going to be very large wind turbines up in that area. So the Coast Guard and others in the maritime community have started looking at this area, the Indian River, as well as the Cape Henlopen area back in 2011. Started looking at an area that we could carve out to ensure that all of these folks that are anchoring out here have an opportunity and have water, deep enough water to anchor. And so we came up with this area as we go, and I'll stop all that stuff moving around, because I think you can see the point of them anchoring here. So we started looking at this area off of Indian River. It's good deep water for the deep draft vessels and some of these ultra large container ships that are coming in, getting ready to go into port. But it's an area right now that is just kind of open. So that's kind of how we came up with this area in here. Cape Henlopen up in this area, Anchorage Sea, is another one that'll hold a few vessels at a time, but it's one that's a little bit closer, and we'll get going on that. And then the one that's inshore is kind of a spillover. This is the one, Anchorage, that's there now, and this is kind of a spillover. You can see where they were anchoring up in here, and they do a lot of anchoring on here. It's a little more protected for when the winds get bad. But that's kind of how we're using this, the portal here, and that's just using tank vessels.
Let's do Tug and Tow.
You want to see Tug and Tow?
Yeah, I see.
All right, we'll start Tug and Tow, and you're going to see the Tug and Tows. They don't anchor through that area, but they do transit as we go. And I'll bring in the north-south PARS here in just a moment. As you see this scroll through the year, you can see there the Tug and Tows are using the TSS as they go, and they come out and they head north and south once they get outside of the traffic separation scheme. I'll pause that, and I'll back out just a little bit. In the AC PARS, the Tug and Tow route will actually come up from the south here, cut right through the U.S. wind energy area, make a turn to the north to the east of Skipjack and Garden State, and head on up, crossing the northern separation scheme at a 90 degrees, and away we go. So that's kind of where they're looking at right now. Again, they'll move all these transit lanes off of that Anchorage area, out through here and up to the north, again opening that area up for the larger vessels, container ships, and the cargo and the tankers to have a good spot to anchor as we go, and keep that free from them, or for them, I should say. Oop.
Yeah, before we move on, I'm just going to highlight. If you look, give the computer time to, actually that might. that's just an overview of what Matt was discussing. So with our Atlantic Coast Port Access Route Study and the naturally occurring transit routes, and the Coast Guard looking at the tug and tow traffic of how to maneuver it through the wind farm areas offshore New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, and then also looking at the Anchorage needs of the maritime community as it relates to headed up to the major ports up in Philadelphia. So moving right along, next up is the Chesapeake Bay lower anchorages. And unlike the Delaware Bay and the Chesapeake Bay studies and notice of inquiry, the potential anchorages, this is a proposed rulemaking. Notice of proposed rulemaking was published, and the comment period has closed, and the Coast Guard is adjudicating the comments. But this is a pretty interesting case. Similar to offshore Delaware Bay, you have vessels that are anchoring in undesignated anchorage areas or waters that they are permitted to anchor in, and they can anchor however they see fit. But due to recent changes over the last 3 to 4 years, the number of vessels anchoring offshore Cape Charles, Virginia has significantly increased, and based on that, the Coast Guard implemented a rulemaking to formally designate the area as an anchorage ground. Matt?
All right, I'm going to turn this one for the moment. Turn it back on in a minute. And lower anchorages. All right, this one was kind of fun as we're looking at it, and really the data portal was a phenomenal tool that we used going into this. And you use kind of an overview this area. I want you to pay attention as I pull up some of the data on this Anchorage area down here. All right, this is our Lynn Haven Anchorage area, which was open to commercial traffic for quite some time, has recently been closed. But you'll see as we scroll through some of the years, you'll see a lot of the anchoring vessels down here. You'll see it all start to shift up into this area, and this is until recently. Well, it's still an undesignated area, but it's one that we're looking at, and you'll see why we chose this area as it is. Now you can see in here, this is the current quarantine anchorage. Our proposal is to move that down, and I think as you see as we scroll through some of the data, this area there, you can see that it's being utilized not as a quarantine but as a regular anchorage. But this is kind of how we use the data port, and I'll kind of jump through this, and I'm not going to do this. I'm going to hit a few of the years. Let's go back to 2011 and see where we were in that. I'm just going to go with cargo vessels right now just to make it easy. All right, so in 2011, you can see a significant amount of anchoring going on here in the lower bay, specifically in this Lynn Haven anchorage. And there's a little bit of anchoring going on up off of Cape Charles in that undesignated area. All right, so that's 2011. All right, so let's jump ahead to 2013. We'll jump 2 years ahead and go, all right, not quite as many down in the Lynn Haven area, but a few more up in the up off of Cape Charles as we go. So not too bad, not too bad. Let's do 2015. And now we see even fewer anchoring evolutions down off here. But now we've almost tripled the number of anchoring off of the Cape Charles area. And again, this is an undesignated area off of the, just off of the channel heading north. This is the quarantine area that, you know, folks are using as they are right now, right? So the Navy said, hey, you know what, we can't have anybody anchoring down here anymore, right? For security reasons, we can't have folks anchoring. So they did that, they did away with that, right? So if we look at 2017, again, cargo, you'll see that we've all pretty much adhered to the, you can't anchor here, and you can see the explosion in the anchoring that's going on up in this area, which is kind of what drove us to designate this area through the rulemaking process. Now this eastern boundary here is 3 miles off the eastern shore, so we're trying, our designated area will keep folks out of 3 miles, and as you can see, the entrance channel into Cape Charles, where a good number of vessels are anchoring or were anchoring, we've tried to get them over into this designated area. So this was kind of in response to trying to get a good, I call it a round turn on this area to get the folks to anchor in the designated spot, to throw some more rules and regulations on them so that we can have, instead of just an undesignated area, but have all the rules associated with the designated anchorage area in effect off the eastern shore. And this was kind of fun to watch through the data as everybody shifted from this anchorage area to the south up into this area to the north. And that's kind of how we use the data portal to kind of go through some of that.
So what's next? So back to the port access route studies. In the Mid-Atlantic region, we have the one going now for Chesapeake Bay, but we also anticipate beginning one to focus really on the Cape Fear River and the facilities that are up in that area and the vessels that are headed to that facility. And to do that, we think we're going to bring the northern border to align with the Chesapeake Bay PARS southern border, and then head south to perhaps splitting Charleston, South Carolina, and Wilmington, North Carolina as a study area, and then out to about the same amount of distance that we went out with Chesapeake Bay PARS to include the north-south transit routes. And then to the north, we're offshore of Delaware Bay. We're looking at beginning the study perhaps a year from now to include the northern boundary of our Chesapeake Bay PARS all the way up through the Mid-Atlantic region to include the New York Bight call areas that are in the Mid-Atlantic region. And we're also working with our Coast Guard partners up north for the New York Bight area as the vessels head into that significant port. So that really concludes our presentation. We're thankful for your time, and we're also available to answer any questions. And we look forward to you participating and posting comments on the docket for our open comment periods.
All right, guys. That was really great, and especially that map of inside the Chesapeake showing the evolution with the AIS data over the years. That was very telling. So we do have one question here from Jeff, and maybe as I ask this, if you can go back to the portal and zoom out to the Delaware WIA, it'll make more sense. Okay. So the question was, why was the area east of the green wind energy area where existing anchorage is occurring not considered? It appears there is a triangle area to the east of the Delaware wind energy area that is open and between the proposed fairways and WIAs and near current anchorage areas based on AIS data.
So I don't know that I understand the question. Why was it not considered? That specifically, this triangle area is being considered by the Coast Guard and the port. So
the area east of the green area.
Out here.
Yeah. Am I getting that right, Jeff? Are they pointing to the correct area that you had in mind? He said it appears there's a triangle area to the east of the Delaware WIA that's open and between the proposed fairways and WIAs and near current anchorage areas based on AIS data.
Yeah, hold on a second.
So my question is going to be, which data were you looking at to find that triangle? I want to be able to see if I can duplicate it.
That's a good question. Does anyone else have any questions in the meantime until we can clarify that?
I didn't do all because that.
Okay, this was from Edward LeBlanc. I second Jeff's question. If you look at the data shown by Matt, how did the Coast Guard arrive at an anchorage west of the traffic separation scheme?
So if you look on the docket for our notice of inquiry for these anchorage areas, the anchorage areas were first identified during the Coast Guard's Atlantic Coast Port Access Route Study, and it was brought to the Coast Guard's attention by the Maritime Advisory Committee of the Delaware River and Bay that they anticipated needing designated offshore anchorages, and those were the areas that they proposed back in 2011. So the Coast Guard, if you look, we are doing a notice of inquiry, which essentially is saying these are our potential anchorage areas. We are seeking comments on whether they are sufficient, whether the status quo is appropriate, or whether there are other anchorage areas that should be considered by the Coast Guard. So we are seeking industry's input, other governmental agencies' input, and the maritime industry input to try to identify the best areas to deconflict the competing interests that are in the water space.
Does anyone else have any questions or even follow-ups to that? Also, a quick apology for any of the audio problems that we experienced earlier. Not sure what the cause of was for that, but I'll review the webinar afterwards and see if I can figure that out. But for those who did call in, you're also welcome to verbally ask a question as long as you just identify yourself beforehand if you'd like to. Any other questions about this presentation or the portal in general? Okay, seeing none. Matt, Jerry, any final thoughts before we chime out?
No, just I would like to thank you. Thank you, the Marco Data Portal team. This was our first time referencing the data portal in our notices that we put in the Federal Register. And I think the webinar is a great tool, and I think we're going to get better engagement from the community, and it's a neat forum for us, so it's pretty exciting. So thank you.
Thank you for taking part in this and for just being great partners in general with the portal. Like I said earlier, this has been recorded, and I will try to post this as soon as possible online, certainly this week and perhaps as early as by the end of the day. If you see the news drop down on the portal navigation up there, if you click on the blog link, we'll have it there, or under help in the webinars section, you'll find it there as well. So thanks again to everybody who took part in this. Enjoy the next 17 minutes of your day that you get back. And thanks again, Jerry and Matt, for taking part.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a great day, everyone.
Signing out. Bye-bye.